Absolutely. Yeah, so a couple of things. You guys are basically drawing 1-to-1 and then kind of in a scaled version, right? I mean, is that kind of what y'all are doing? Is it supposed to be a certain scale, or is it going to be a certain size, but then translates to that scale? All right. So relatively speaking, I didn't get to show you guys this last time, but DIM, dim, as in dim the lights, right?
As in dimension?
Dimension, right? If you hit dimension, you can actually click on 2 points. In my case, mine will struggle. But you can click on 2 points and of course actually get a measurement from it. If you double click on that measurement, because right now 38.10 millimeters is definitely not inches, right? However, you'll see you have different styles. And if you actually go down to alternative units or even just length units, we can switch it from millimeters decimal to inches fractional, right? We'll press apply, and voila, 1.5 inches, right? Definitely a little bit more useful. Also at the same time, it's really, really big. So again, another thing that we can do is say like 0.5, and we can make that a little bit smaller, right? The arrows are still very big. So again, you might have to double click on these a couple of different times and actually scale down some things, right? However, dimension lines can be changed, just about arrows can be changed. I mean, you can really change a lot of different things here. Let's go with like a 0.5 there. And as you can see, we can really get this down without having to necessarily draw arrows and draw dimension lines. Don't get me wrong, back in the day, that's what I used to do. I would literally just draw it, literally type it in, and now it's actually all automatic through a command, right? So that definitely makes our life a little bit easier. However, if we're trying to print, we do need to establish a certain scale, right? And from what I hear, it needs to go on 11 by 17. So I'm gonna move my object out of the way and really just make a rectangle, right? So I'm gonna type rectangle. I'm gonna click my first base point, that is what it's gonna ask for. And then I'm gonna type in 17 inches for my X and 11 inches for the Y. So 11 inches. And there's that 11 by 17, just like that. Right, some of you guys may have realized that, you know, the measurements that you take, you can literally type that in as you're drawing a line, hit enter, and it'll make that dimension, right? Hopefully you're already on your track. Now, I can't imagine that you have to do dimension lines, but again, if you want to double check those things, obviously you can. However, you don't necessarily need them. Keep in mind, we can't really edit them either. As soon as we move this point, it really does change the dimension itself. If you did want to explode it and maybe change a layer or something like that, we can definitely type in explode and turn it in basically into its smallest parts. Basically what explode does is no matter what you see, whether it's a block or a command, it essentially explodes it into its simplest parts. And it says, are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, because you can't go back, right? You can't like unexplode something. So once you explode it, it's done, right? But however, it does allow some things, right? If I wanted to change any of these pieces, right? I could still, but I couldn't do that in the dimension line. So again, I'm still teaching the interface and still teaching some of these things. So we have our 11 by 17. We can check that as well. So dimension. Keep in mind, I don't think actually dimension applies to every dimension. So it might be something you want to do all together once you have all your dimensions. Double click on them, and of course change that to the dimension style as needed. But again, I just kind of use it for reference anyway. Keep in mind, it is based on your units. So when you type in units, again, make sure that you're on inches, right? Because we need that to be in exactly 11 by 17. So that's pretty good. And let's say I was done there. I don't know, maybe I want a perspective as well. I don't think a perspective is part of y'all's project, but you know, say it was for studio, right? I could take that exact view, make 2D, get some hidden lines, press apply, and I can instantly take that piece and apply it, right? We can get that object. So that's pretty nice. I can even make it bigger for, you know, dramatic effect or, you know, visual hierarchy. Again, this is where I would also draw maybe my title block, right? So some things that I didn't really get to go over last time are some of the two-dimensional 2D operations that we can do, such as offset. So we can offset lines. How big is your title blocks usually?
3/8.
3/8. So 3/8 of an inch. I can get that border. All right, let's say it was another inch inside. I can definitely do those things. Now, it got all three of them, right? So again, I might need to explode and break it down to its smallest parts, and you'll see, yeah, it's broken down to some of the lines that I don't need. So let's say I got rid of those. and maybe I wanted to extend this line actually further out. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes there's like 15 different ways to do the exact same thing. Sometimes I'll just gumball it and trim it. Right? So I'll take everything, trim, and obviously trim the excess of what I don't need. Maybe I take that off as well, or I just need it as my boundary. So again, I'll take everything, trim, and trim off what I don't need. Making some sense, right? I could draw another line, or I could just realize, hey, I could just copy that line and realize, well, I needed it 1 inch away, so I'm going to type in 1 inch, and it's going to put that inch there for me. I can hold shift and I can keep it orthogonal, right, if I need to. It's a game changer, right? I mean, simply just copy the line. I mean, why not? We already have that measurement, so we might as well take it. Again, what's really I appreciate about digital programs is the ability to move things, right? So again, allow yourself to kind of position those things a little bit more advanced, and maybe this is just me. I like to put my construction lines. Very often what I teach in computer graphics is actually to kind of fake it a little bit, and as you can see, my snap has stopped working. But very often I actually put in my construction lines. And I know that sounds kind of funny, especially in a digital world. But very often I bring up Toy Story 4. The reason why it's so much better is actually because it has more errors than Toy Story 1. It's the errors in life that actually make perfection, or really make our mind realize that something is maybe perfect versus not perfect. However, let's say I was finished. I got my 11x17. I got my title block. I've got all my positions, and I even have some separate layers so that I can maybe even make some construction lines, right? Keep in mind, they don't work the same way as in drafting, right? Obviously, we make the construction lines first, whereas in the digital realm, I kind of apply them second to add weathering, if you will.
And that's critical,
right?
because in real life, I'll use an electrical plan as an example. An electrician gets a set of electrical plans, and you want a certain light in a certain place at a midpoint of a room or 1/3 of the room, whatever. We show construction lines on those drawings too, just so that the installer can say, oh, he wants this light exactly in the middle of this room.
Right.
And because sometimes what you draw is not what was built, and it's off by a little bit. So instead of putting a dimension, you put a line, say midpoint of the room, and it's really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, especially if I wanted to do that, I would probably give myself a midpoint line, right? And oh boy, I'm finding out that even my drawing's a little off, right? So again, I might want to actually check those things. Now, honestly, I can't remember how I made this last time, but that's okay. I can still fix some things though, right? If I move them, and of course still move that up, and hit those lines and things like that. I can also push my layer towards the back. And it's not necessarily going to do anything here, but it definitely will do something in Illustrator, which is the next program we'll be jumping to. A couple more things, just in case you run into this. If you want to extend a line, I know it's super intuitive. You actually click the line that you want to extend to, type extend, and then select the line that you want to extend to. So again, that could be a game changer if you don't want to just keep extending lines and trimming them. I'm a fan of just trimming things because that's just the way I learned. In my case, I don't really need that line, but I do have my 11x17, I have my pieces, and to be fair, I'm going to actually do my text in Illustrator because it looks better anyway. But maybe I needed a second line, so I'm going to take that line, hit the midpoint, and get some of those things. I may want to trim them up, so trim, right? Maybe I actually want to keep this for my logo or something, maybe the top. Again, we can obviously make some isolated boxes and trim as necessary. But the really important part to get it into Illustrator, super easy. We'll take the entire thing. Awesome. We'll go to File, Export Selected, and we'll turn it into a DWG. To be fair, there is an Adobe Illustrator file, but it doesn't always work. I would say go to a DWG. It's a little bit more universal. So DWG, AutoCAD file, that is an AutoCAD file. I'm just going to save it to my desktop for ease, and we'll call it G1 Illustrator. It's going to bring up a message that goes, hey, how do you want to save it? Just choose the youngest or the earliest year in lines, right? So you'll see there's a lot of options here. Obviously, we're not working with polylines or solids. We want to choose 2007 lines. If that's not available, cam imperial is also fine. Why imperial? Because we want it to stay in inches. We don't want it to necessarily go into millimeters again. So you can choose cam imperial or even just 2007 lines. I'll press export, and that's it, right? From here, we'll go to Adobe Illustrator. We'll go to open, and we'll open up that DWG. So in my case, I'll open up my G1 Illustrator DWG. In my case, I'm not scaling anything here. The way that I drew the lines in Rhino, I drew them at an exact length, at exact inches. So I want to maintain that and just say original size. So in my case, 1 unit equals 1 inch. Sweet. Press OK. There it is, right? Now, I kind of lucked out. My default artboard is 11 by 17. I can't imagine y'all's default artboard is at 11 by 17. So let's go over what to do if yours isn't, right? So let me open it up wrong to kind of show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. Another thing that's kind of cool about this is, well, if I did need to scale it to something, I could say scale by, right? And well, if I want 1 inch to equal something else, I could, right? So for instance, I could use 0.125, which would be 1/8 inch, right? So I can say every inch equals now 1/8 inch. Is it going to get bigger or smaller? It's going to get smaller, right? So if I press OK, oh, super small. However, this is usually what it actually looks like, especially when your artboard's too big and things like that. The first thing to go over is, well, let's make sure the artboard's the right size. In this case, that's that white border that you see here. One of the first things that you can do in Illustrator, just to kind of explain it, is you'll click on this very top right, and you'll make sure that it's in Essentials Classic. Why? Because there's a lot more tools in Essentials Classic, and it's classic, right?
It's classic.
We'll go to File, we'll go to Document Setup, and Edit Artboards. When we click on that, you'll see that it enacts this kind of like view mode, if you will. When you click on that viewport, actually at the top it'll tell you the dimensions of the viewport. Mine being exactly 11 by 17 already, right? But let's just say it was accidentally, I don't know, maybe we actually needed it on maybe a 8.5 by 11, right? So let's say we have to change that. We'll do a width of 11. You can do the inch symbol too, and 8.5. It's already in inches, so you don't actually need the inch symbol. But yeah, we can change that artboard, and now that piece of paper will only be a letter size piece of paper. Now, since this is 11 by 17, we probably should put in 11 by 17. So we'll put it back to 17, and we'll put it back to 11. Not too shabby. But if you accidentally imported at the wrong scale, not a big deal. We'll take the entire thing, and we'll line it up to at least one of those corners. After all, that 11 by 17 I drew is super important because I may need it to actually align some of the scale that goes on with my drawing. From there, I'll hold shift, because if I don't, it can get really crazy. So I'll hold shift, and I'll notice that it magically goes together. You see like a little purple line pop up because it's called Smart Tools, and it's basically trying to help you out a little bit. However, now that it's the exact same size, we can verify that as well. So if I do Command R or Control R, it brings up a little ruler. You guys saw that? It's a little ruler. I wish that was a feature on a drafting table so badly, right? I mean, it's in my opinion that the drafting table should have these kind of borders on them, right? If not, obviously our scales. But from here, I can magically click inside of that ruler and drag it out, and you'll notice it actually makes a grid line for us. So I can further actually verify, and when I zoom in, and I can hold spacebar to basically pan and move around, and I can actually verify some of my dimensions. Now, not exactly as easy as DIM and Rhino. So again, what I like to use Illustrator for is really composition and changing line weight. That's it. Now, of course, I'm doing a little bit more of an explanation today, just because I do realize this may be the first time that you've ever used Illustrator. What I'm doing there to zoom in and zoom out is Control plus or Control minus, right? That's just the way I like to do it. There's also other ways to do it, but again, I don't want to confuse you guys for today. But the title block is looking good, and we need to go to our layers. We need to change some layers, and we can do it all at once, right? We don't have to click on every single line and do it one at a time, even though we could, right? Especially if we wanted to get some really nice results. But I'll go to layers, which looks like 2 stacked slices of cheese. And you'll see that we have all of the available layers that we exported. Now, if you turn them off, obviously they go away. And you can turn them on actually one at a time. There was my construction layers, there's some of my hidden lines, there's my main lines, and some of the other text and text borders. Now, magically enough, you'll click on an invisible box. I know how redundant that sounds, but essentially it's that little invisible box, and it'll actually select everything in that layer, right? Once I do that, I can change the stroke to, I don't know, say 1. And obviously I don't want the color orange, so I'll click on the stroke. This controls the fill, this controls the stroke. And obviously I'll choose something kind of a gray scale, something that maybe even mimics the graphite pencil that I would normally use in a drafting situation. I'll switch it to that, and nothing will change. What happened? Need to change both. There we go. And some things are looking a little out of place. I don't remember that in Rhino. I may have accidentally shifted some things. Keep in mind you can still click on lines and of course move them, right, as necessary. However, it's not a drawing program, at least not for architects yet, right? You'll get in, I'll show you how to draw the right way in Illustrator. But for now, let's draw in Rhino and let's import into Illustrator. Well, in Illustrator, just line weights and composition, right? From there, I'll go to the next layer, right? I can even lock that one and go to the next one. Great, select all of them. And I'm gonna change the color to slightly lighter gray. And maybe I do want those to actually be pretty thick. So I would say 0.8, it's probably pretty thick. Starting to look pretty drafted, Next layer, I'll lock that one, that way I don't accidentally move anything. Ooh, that one needs some hidden lines, right? I mean, if I zoom in, I bet I could even see, well, no, it's too big. It should be hidden, but you can see that it's slightly gray, that's for sure. So I'll take that whole layer, and let's make it slightly grayer. I'm gonna go with a little bit lighter. And I'm gonna go with a little bit thicker. And then you'll notice actually these 3 line weights, right? If you click on that, you actually have a couple of options. If you don't see this right away, you can actually make sure you show options. So sometimes it's defaulted like that. You click on those 3 lines, show options, and we'd actually change it to a dash line. So when we hit dash line, we can actually change some things such as like 5 and maybe a 2, those kinds of things. If you zoom in, voila, we have a dash line, right? I can do that again, right? Just for the sake of measure. Maybe change that up again. There's maybe not enough space, or maybe the line's too big, right? So maybe I'll go with a 5 and a 5. Sweet. Not too shabby, right? Next layer. Those are my construction lines. All right, let's get some construction lines involved. I want those to be extremely light, and I don't necessarily want anybody to see them first, right? So I'll make them very small. And in fact, the very smallest line that you can even make on a printer is 0.125. However, they should more or less actually kind of disappear. Let me get rid of these grid lines. You almost can't see them, right? There they are. They actually come up pretty well in the projector. But again, it really starts to make the drawing a lot less computery, a lot less like a robot did it. It actually starts to, even dare I say, have some errors to it, sort of some longer extensions than others. Something that would actually happen in a drafting situation. I can even move it around a little bit and make it my own. However, I do have some text that came in from Rhino, and I do want to show you why I don't do the text in Rhinos, because, well, I can't edit it. It's just sort of, it is what it is, right? Now, of course, it may be because I locked on a layer, but if you double click on it, it really has a hard time. Well, actually, I'm okay here. Maybe it's starting to work. However, back in the day, that was not always the case, right? It's okay for a placeholder, I think. Wow, I can really go back the whole time, okay. You can use it as a placeholder. In my case, I just want to show you how to do, say, another one. So, say it wasn't working on you. Obviously, you can use that position, you can use your arrows, right? And of course, you can line those things up too. I mean, at the end of the day, we can still actually move a lot of things. But as you see, selecting something in Illustrator is a bit of a pain in the butt, right? But that being the case, they're just placeholders, so I can either double click on them. In my case, as you can see, it's kind of hard to change, but let's say I didn't want that all maybe capital text. Obviously, I think you'd want yours to be capital text, but in my case, I can change the color of them as well. That changes the outline of the color, and that changes the inside of the color. All right, not too shabby. You can also make it have nothing, right? Now, of course, you actually have to select something first. You can make it disappear. Maybe not exactly what we need, but you can definitely mix and match with these. In fact, it even has like a little switcher in there that you can actually switch those things. So again, I want to give you enough tools to play around with, because really I don't want to make robots, I want to make designers, right? So obviously, I think giving you a bunch of tools, well, here you go. What are you going to do with them, right? Those kinds of things. But it's looking pretty good so far. Definitely not too shabby. I may need to fill in my text or maybe a logo or two. So let's go ahead and go to the text box, which is that big letter T right there. Basically, I'll make some sort of bounding box, right? And it will put in some Pig Latin at first, but in my case, I'm going to use Christopher Verret. And of course, I can select the whole thing and make that text a little bit bigger. And voila. Obviously, I can position that just right. And not too shabby. Actually, it's really dominating the page. I'd say it's a little bit too dark. Another thing that I typically was also taught was to never use true black. Why? Because the printer is often way too dark, way too black, and it often looks very computer generated rather than what we want to go for is actually a drafted method. You guys already drafting should know what that looks like, right? So I'm going to use a slightly gray. And that's going to be a little bit better, right? To be fair, the preview is what it is, but again, we can add basically all these different line weights and different attributes. In fact, if you wanted to even add a little bit more error, which I like to do from time to time, is actually slightly mess with some of the lines, right? And we can't, right? And it often makes it look and appear a little bit more human because of it. So. Not too shabby. We got our drawing. We got our 11 by 17 from here. We'll press print. So we can either save it, obviously as a PDF. We'll save it to our computer today. Not as an Illustrator file, but of course as a Adobe PDF. I'll save it as G1 Illustrator. Save. And in my case, I do want a high quality print, so I'll select high quality print and save PDF. It'll go ahead and do that. Let's go take a look at what it created. So we'll go to our PDF documents. Not too shabby. And of course, that will be the PDF that I actually print out. So I'd open that up in Adobe Acrobat on the school computers and press print. I'd make sure that in my print settings that I set the paper to tabloid, because tabloid is an 11 by 17, right? Once I hit print, it's going to bring up this fancy new system called GoPrint, and it's going to charge you probably 15 cents to print it out, but that's not too bad. Also, a word to the wise, especially if you're investing in yourself, or maybe I know Christmas is coming up. Maybe you ask the parents or grandparents for a printer that prints 11 by 17. It goes a long way. I found mine on offer for 55 bucks, and honestly, the most expensive part about a printer is the ink, right? So, you know, I kind of like to share my secrets of wealth, right, if you will. And it's definitely looking at the aftermarket ink, right, and seeing that, wow, you know, they actually make this aftermarket ink on Amazon, and well, I can get actually 4 packs of it for $18 instead of 1 pack of it for $65, right? In fact, by volume, ink is still the world's most expensive item by volume, ink, right? And they've definitely got us because we either have to draft it and pay for the pencils, or we have to pay for the ink that goes onto the paper, right? So, any questions so far about that process? Pretty simple, I think. Not too shabby. Luckily, it's all recorded, so you can actually stop by stop. Any questions about Rhino? Some things that you're running into, something that you're trying to do, and maybe there might be a better way. No questions? Fair enough. Baby, see kind of the
still.
The mind rolling?
I'll just check back on the videos.
Good. Well, fair enough. I'll end it there for today.